What's going on, everybody? Sonar here, and I'm just out here on the water enjoying a beautiful day, and I was just thinking about a question that I get a lot from people, and that is, what styles of hook should I be using for the different type of soft plastics and worms out there in Elastec? And so I wanted to go ahead and answer that question with this video and kind of dive into my hook box. This is the hook box that I carry with me for every single event across the country fishing the FLW Pro circuit, and any fishery that I go to and using any tactic, I'm going to be pulling from this box. So this is exactly what I throw 100% of the time when it comes to my soft plastics and Elastec baits that I use. So let's dive right in, and the first thing that I need to mention is the fact that I am indeed sponsored by Hayabusa Fishing. I really think that they've got some of the best hooks on the market. The designs are just on point, and I haven't had any failures. I couldn't be happier with working with them because they've got some great products. And one of the things that I really like about them, before we get diving into the different designs here, one of the things that they do is they have this NRB coating on some of their hooks, and it's a really slick coating, like the Teflon on a frying pan, and what that does is it really does allow for easier hook sets and easier penetration into the hardest parts of those fish's mouth, and that makes a big difference over a year when you consider all the fish that you might have not got in the boat because maybe you were moving too quickly towards them, you didn't get a good solid hook set, whatever the situation may be. I think that NRB coating really does make a difference. But let's dive into the specific designs, and a lot of these designs are very common with all the different brands on the market, but as you can see, everything in my box is Hayabusa. So let's start off with a very basic kind of one of the first worm hooks that you're going to be using when you're talking about Texas rigging, and that is an offset shank worm hook like this, if I can get a hold of them. That right there is an offset shank worm hook. You can see you've got this little kink there, that little elbow, and that hook right there, this right here is the Hayabusa 957 worm hook. The 957 is really good for any of those situations where you're fishing narrow baits, real thin finesse worms, all the way up to the big 10-inch ribbon tail worms. The regular offset shank hook is a great choice for those. So I've got everywhere from 2/0 all the way up to 5/0, and I think I got a couple 6/0s in here for the biggest worms that I've got. But as a general rule, when you're talking about Texas rigging a traditional soft plastic or an Elastec bait, you want to make sure that the gap of the hook is about twice the width of the bait that you're using. With the Elastec, it's not quite as important because it's so soft, it compresses nice, and it doesn't tend to gob up on the hook nearly as much. But it's really important to match the width of the gap to the bait that you're using. All right, and so next we get into a very similar hook design, but it's a little bit different as far as the width of the gap. Okay, and this right here is what we call an EWG. That's just the kind of the overall general name of this hook, and the actual number that I have as far as Hayabusa is at 959. All right, that's the one that has the heavier wire, and then I've also got one that's called a Power Stage hook that's it's still very similar design, but it's got a lighter wire hook, so if I'm using lighter line, I keep both of those on hand, a heavier gauge wire for the thickest cover and a thinner gauge wire for fishing lighter line, things like flukes or jerk baits, those sort of things. I'm not going to need that real heavy gauge wire like I would need for flipping and pitching in real heavy cover. And as far as sizes that I use, again, it's generally between 3/0 and 6/0 with these style hooks. And of course, the reason why you're using the wide gap offset is, like we talked about before, you're going to be using it for baits that are a little bit thicker. You know, I was down in Florida just recently fishing the FLW Pro Circuit, and the 959 was the big player because I was flipping and pitching heavy cover using the Z-Man palmetto bugs, and this hook right here, because it has that wider gap, got really good solid hook sets even with that thicker palmetto bugs. So this is the 959 and those EWG styles are really the key when it comes to flipping and pitching, and I really don't use straight shank hooks anymore. The 959 is the only hook that I flip with nowadays, because I just feel like an offset shank hook like this tends to hook those fish better in places where the meat is a lot stronger, you know, in the mouth. Instead of hooking it, you know, around the edges and things like that, it tends to hook them really solid. So that's why I've switched all of my flipping tactics to the 959 as opposed to a straight shank hook with a snell knot. It's a little bit controversial right now because a lot of guys are still real keyed in on that straight shank hook, but I'm telling you, if you switch to a hook like this 959, you're going to get more fish in the boat, and you're going to hook those fish in places where you're going to have to pull the pliers out to get that hook out. So anyways, as far as the EWG or the wide gap design, I've got the power stage between 3/0 and 5/0, and then I've got the 959 between 3/0 and 6/0, and that pretty much covers all of that. All right, so moving forward, now we're going to start getting into some of the more finesse tactics with some of these hooks, including drop shot. I'm not a big drop shot guy, but I do occasionally fish a drop shot. And the hook that really I really lean on is just a very basic drop shot design. This is the DSR 132 HD from Hayabusa. I like a nose hook when I'm drop shotting most of the time, and so I have a variety of these, anywhere from number 2 all the way up to 2/0 like this one. But generally the 132 HD is the one that I have the most of in my box. So have a variety of those, just keeping it simple. And then moving into the wacky rig, which is one of my favorite tactics for this time of year during the spring. That's when I use a slightly different hook than, you know, I used to use a drop shot hook, but nowadays I use the WRM 962. All right, this is one of the designs that I really love from Hayabusa. When wacky rigging, I like to have a wide gap finesse hook, and they've really made the best hook. This right here is a wide gap design, you can tell. It's got a shorter shank to it. It almost has the shape of a drop shot hook, but it's got that much wider gap, and just overall it is the perfect hook for wacky rigging, especially if you're throwing something like a stick bait that has a wider profile to it, and even with a finesse worm. So that is the hook that I use for all my wacky rigging, and I carry sizes between, what is this one? 2/0. 2/0 is on the upper end of my wacky rig hook scale. So I've got some 2/0, but generally 1/0 is my go-to size, and I go down to, I think, a size 1. I think size 1 is the smallest wacky rig hook that I have. All right, so last but not least, let's talk about a hook that is a little bit different from the other ones. The other hooks that I have already discussed in here are all for all those different soft plastic, either Texas rigging, drop shotting, wacky rig, whatever it is, those hooks handle that. But now we're going to talk about a very important hook in this tackle box that is for a different purpose. It's for catching those fish that are short striking baits like a spinner bait, and that is a trailer hook. A trailer hook is extremely important when you're fishing at something like a spinnerbait, because those fish can really start slapping at it, and sometimes they don't get the body of the bait and get that built-in hook, and a trailer hook is your insurance policy on that bait. And this right here is the Hayabusa WRM 929. This hook right here is by far the best trailer hook I've ever found for spinnerbaits, and I'll tell you why. Let's open this pack up and I'll show you something. There's two things that really make it special. Actually, three things. Let's see if I can get one out of here. All right, so the first one is, it's just a great design. You know, this is a 3-aught. I also run 2-aughts, but it's got a really good design. It's a little bit shorter of a trailer hook than some of the other brands out there, which I like. I don't want something that's trailering too far off the bait. And then what I really like about it is the eye of the hook. Okay, this eye is going to be sliding over the built-in hook on your spinnerbait, and I like it because it's kind of squared off and a little bit narrower than other hooks. Okay, so it's not going to want to swing all the way 360 degrees. It just essentially stays a little bit straighter on the back of that spinnerbait, which I really like. The third thing that I really like about this hook is the fact that it has that NRB coating, and again, even if those fish are just swiping at it, you're going to have a better hooking percentage because that hook just has better penetration overall. And actually, I lied. There's 4 things I really like about these Hayabusa 929s, and the final thing is, if I can get one of these little beads out. The final thing is that the way that they have you rig these onto your spinnerbait are with these little tiny black rubber beads. Okay, so you're essentially going to slide one down before you put the hook on, and then as soon as you put the trailer hook on, you're going to put the second one on. In fact, I've got a spinnerbait to show you as an example. All right, so here we go. This is a Z-Man Sling Blades, and as you can see on the shank of this hook, we've got a rubber little keeper right there on the bottom, and then as soon as I slid that trailer hook on, I put the other rubber keeper after it. This overall is the best trailer hook design I've ever seen. These little rubber keepers are just money. They are perfect. They've got a low profile to them. They're easy to install, and just overall, I love the way that they design that. So from the hook to the keepers, the 929 is just pretty incredible. All right, so that is my hook box. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure that if you do like this video, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, Sonar Fishing. And if you have any questions, comment below and I'll get right back to you. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys out on the water.